social status hierarchy.
One feature of low rank is being low ranking, the reality. An even stronger feature by the time you get to humans is not just being low ranking or poor, it's feeling low ranking or poor. And one of the best ways for society to make you feel like one of the have-nots is to rub your nose over and over and over again with what you don't have.
Richmond, California, a town where society's extremes can be spotted right from your car. This is cardiologist Jeffrey Ritterman's regular commute.
You can learn a lot about the stress and health outcome just from the neighborhoods you visit. In this neighborhood, the life expectancy is quite good, and most of the people are pretty healthy. And as we reach the top of the hill, it gets to be a little bit less privileged. And as we make this transition, the social status begins to drop, and correspondingly in those areas the health outcome is much worse. And these people are not going to have the same life expectancy as the people in the middle class area we started in. People are on guard, people are vigilant, they're living a more stressful life. This is a community that produces high stress hormones in people, and over time, it takes its toll.
One of Dr. Ritterman's patients is 65-year-old Emmanuel Johnson. His career? Guidance counselor in one of America's most dangerous neighborhoods.
Well, last year, I think we had 47 homicides. You know, in the last 4 days, we had 11 shootings, 3 deaths. And I just know 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a relative or someone that the kids know.
For Emmanuel Johnson, there is a price for chronic exposure to this stress.
5 years ago, I had a heart attack. I'm a diabetic too. I have to work on it constantly. I've been in this business 20 years, so it's stressful, just working the job. So over the years, the cholesterol, the blood pressure, the sugar came on later, but the stress was always there long before they came on.
Emmanuel Johnson's body may be telling yet another story of stress. The Whitehall study in England found an incredible link between stress, your position in the social hierarchy, and how you put on weight.
So it may not be just putting on weight, but also the distribution of that weight. And the distribution of that weight, putting it on round the center, is related to position in the hierarchy, and that in turn may be related to chronic stress pathways.
So we said, does that happen in monkeys? Because they organize themselves in a hierarchy too. And it turns out that it does. Subordinate monkeys are more likely to have fat in their abdomen than are dominant monkeys. I think the most amazing observation that I've made in my lab is this idea that stress could actually change the way you deposit fat on your body. To me, that was a bizarre idea that you could actually alter the way fat is distributed.
Sapolsky, Shively, and others think stress could be a critical factor in the global obesity epidemic. Even worse, fat brought on by stress is dangerous fat.
We know that fat carried on the trunk or actually inside the abdomen is much worse for you than fat carried elsewhere on the body. It behaves differently. It produces different kinds of hormones and chemicals and has different effects on your health. Whatever it is that works for an individual, they need to value stress reduction. I think the problem in our society is that we don't value stress reduction. We, in fact, value the opposite. We admire the person who not only multitasks and does 2 things at once, but does 5 things at once. We kind of admire that person. How do they manage that, you know? Well, that's incredibly stressful way to live. We have to change our values and value people who understand a balanced and serene life.
One heartbreaking moment in history reveals that stress may, in fact, damage us long before we are even aware. Holland, late 1944. A brutal winter and a merciless army of occupation conspire to starve a nation. It is known as the Dutch Hunger Winter. For those who survive today, these are haunting memories.
Ik had niks. Ik kon hem niet zelf voeden meer. Het leek wel of ik de tering had, zo ziek was ik. En dan moet je voor zo'n kind gaan zorgen. Vond ik heel erg. Dat heb ik gedaan op de Dam, naast het paleis. En ik heb gevraagd aan de kosteres: wilt u zolang als de oorlog duurt mijn kindje grootbrengen? Want ik kan het niet.
Dutch researcher Tessa Roseboom had heard many of those tragic memories. She and her team wanted to know if there were any lingering effects. Roseboom knew that our bodies respond to famine in much the same way they respond to other stressors. So she set out to see if the fetuses of women pregnant during these arduous days could possibly be affected by stress. Because of meticulous record-keeping by the Dutch, Roseboom was able to identify over 2,400 people who could have been impacted. She and her team analyzed the data from those born during and after the famine and came to a surprising conclusion.
I think that you could say that these babies were exposed to stress in fetal life, and they're still suffering the consequences of that now, 60 years later.
Many of the Dutch Hunger Winter children live today, all in their 60s. Many still bear the scars of war.
We found that babies who were conceived during the famine have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. They have more hypercholesterolemia. They are more responsive to stress. And they generally are in poorer health than people who were born before the famine or conceived after it.
Researchers think that stress hormones in a mother's blood triggered a change in the nervous system of the fetus as it struggled with starvation. This was the fetus's first encounter with stress. 6 decades later, the bodies of these Dutch Hunger Winter children still haven't forgotten.
What we now know is it's not just your fat cell storage that winds up being vulnerable to events like this. It's your brain chemistry. It's your capacity to learn as an adult. It's your capacity to respond to stress adaptively rather than maladaptively. How readily you fall into depression. How vulnerable you are to psychiatric disorders. Yet another realm in which early experience and early stress can leave a very bad footprint.